Welcome once again, my friends. Please join me in my study and let me tell you the haunting tale of the Hexham Heads. The quaint market town of Hexham in Northumberland rests peacefully on the southern bank of the majestic River Tyne, just 25 miles west of bustling Newcastle. However, beneath its serene surface lies a rich tapestry of history, woven with tales of turmoil and conflict spanning countless centuries. Back in the latter part of the 9th century, the audacious Viking chieftain Halfdan Ragnarsson descended upon Tyneside, leaving a trail of plunder and destruction in his wake. Hexham Church, a symbol of tranquility, fell victim to his marauding raids, reduced to ashes and ruins. In the year 1297, amidst the fervour of the Wars of Independence, the valiant Scottish knight William Wallace, fresh from his triumph at the Battle of Stirling, set his sights on Hexham. With his army he launched a daring attack, aiming to extend his sphere of influence. Hexham felt the brunt of his aggression, suffering the consequences of his conquest. 50 years later, King David II embarked on his own invasion, unleashing havoc upon the original monastery. This sacred institution, established almost 7 centuries prior by the revered St. Wilfrid, had risen from the ashes of a previous assault by the Danes. Sadly, only the crypt of this once grand structure endures as a testament to its former glory. During the tumultuous Wars of the Roses, Hexham found itself thrust into the midst of a pivotal clash. On the 15th of May 1464, John Neville, the first Marquess of Montague, confronted and vanquished the Lancastrian resistance led by Henry Beaufort, the 3rd Duke of Somerset. The Duke met a grim fate, losing his head in the very heart of Hexham's marketplace, his life cut short on that very same day. Fast forward to the first Jacobite uprising of 1715, where the echoes of rebellion resonated once again in Hexham's bustling market square. James Radcliffe, the 3rd Earl of Derwentwater, rallied support for the House of Stuart, unfurling the standard of defiance against the ruling powers. Yet, like his ill-fated predecessor, Henry Beaufort, the Earl would suffer a similar fate. His treasonous act led to his execution on Tower Hill in February 1716, a grim aftermath of the Battle of Preston. And then, in the year 1761, Hexham's marketplace witnessed yet another grim chapter in its troubled history. Frustration and dissent welled up amongst the local populace, who vehemently protested against military conscription. The response was merciless, as soldiers from the North Yorkshire militia opened fire upon the gathering crowd, ruthlessly claiming the lives of 51 individuals, forever staining the cobblestones with their blood. Thus, the town of Hexham, with its picturesque facade and serene riverside settings, holds within its ancient stones a chronicle of conquest, resistance, and sacrifice. Each chapter, woven with the threads of triumph and tragedy, stands as a testament to the indomitable spirit and resilience of the people who have called this historic place home. In ancient times, long before the Roman era, Hexham and the surrounding area along the Tyne Valley were part of the northern territory belonging to the Brigantes, a Celtic tribe. They ruled over a vast region in northern England, with their central power base in what is now Yorkshire. The Brigantes held a deep reverence for the human head, considering it the most sacred symbol of their culture. This cult of the human head played a significant role in their religious practices, although its exact importance has been a subject of debate amongst scholars. One notable aspect of this veneration was the practice of Celtic warriors severing the heads of their fallen enemies and displaying them as trophies. These severed heads would often be placed at the entrances of hill forts and shrines, serving as a grim reminder of their triumphs. Evidence of this macabre custom was unearthed during the excavation of a Celtic sanctuary in Rocs Pertus, located in Veleux, a town 70 miles northwest of Marseille in southern France. In this ancient site, dating back to the 3rd century BC, a portico or entrance doorway was discovered with specially carved niches that housed human skulls. In Celtic Britain, the reverence for the human head was also manifested in the creation of carved stone effigies. These stone heads possibly served as charms to ward off malevolent spirits, or as symbols of fertility. Many such stone heads have been found in the north of England, corresponding to the former kingdom of Brigantia. Considering this historical context, the occasional discovery of similar stone artefacts in Hexham, an area once inhabited by the Brigantes, would not typically be considered extraordinary or noteworthy. However, an incident that occurred in the early 1970s in Hexham has surpassed the realms of archaeology to become one of the most captivating and controversial subjects discussed by paranormal enthusiasts today. This incident, known as the case of the Hexham Heads, has intrigued many, as its peculiar circumstances remain unexplained to this day. Despite its enigmatic nature, the event has piqued the curiosity of those interested in the supernatural, blending archaeology with the realm of the unexplained. Reed Avenue, a short road nestled in an estate of modest post-war council houses, lies just a stone's throw southeast of the bustling main town centre. Originally built on farmland known as bog acres, these houses are practical and unremarkable, lacking any distinguishing features that set them apart from the countless other similar developments constructed by local authorities throughout the latter half of the 20th century. In 1971, the Robson family settled into number 3 Reed Avenue, a 2-bedroom house situated at the western end of the street. Life carried on as usual until early the following year, when something extraordinary occurred. Towards the end of May 1971, or perhaps in early June, the exact date remains unclear, 11-year-old Colin Robson was digging in the small back garden when he stumbled upon a peculiar discovery. Buried in the earth was a fascinating round object, slightly smaller than a cricket ball. As Colin scraped away the clinging soil, a small stone head with a human-like face revealed itself. Intrigued, Colin called out to his younger brother Leslie, and together they embarked on a quest to find another one of these peculiar treasures. Shortly thereafter, Leslie Robson came across what turned out to be a second stone head. The brothers brought their newfound articles inside, where they carefully cleaned them up. It became evident that both heads were crafted by human hands from a heavy greenish-grey sandstone-like material which contained traces of a quartz-like crystal. The slightly larger head, resembling a skull, acquired the nickname Girl due to its rounded witch-like face. On the reverse side there were distinct attempts to sculpt hair, appearing as if combed back. Additionally, a yellowish-red pigment on this side of the stone provided it with a touch of colour. The second head possessed a clearly masculine personality, with hair-like patterns of stripes adorning the top and back. This boy head featured more pinched features, and the surviving photograph of both heads together captured their individuality as well as their undeniably sinister expressions. Most versions of the story acknowledge that as soon as the stone heads were discovered, a series of peculiar and unsettling incidents began occurring inside the quaint house on Reed Avenue. These incidents seem to revolve around the two enigmatic objects. Paul Screeton, a regional journalist fascinated by folklore and the supernatural, delved into the case in 1977 and documented a range of unsettling events. The heads would mysteriously turn, objects would inexplicably break, and when shattered glass rained down on one of the Robsons' daughters' beds, both girls decided to abandon their room. However, the poltergeist-like phenomena did not confine themselves to the Robson family or their dwelling. Their immediate neighbours, the Dodds, also experienced bizarre occurrences. After enduring several restless nights during which her children complained of being touched by an unseen presence in their bedroom, Ellen Dodd had reason to sleep in their room to care for an ailing child. Initially dismissing the complaints as childish pranks, Mrs. Dodd grew exasperated when her 10-year-old son Brian insisted that something was pressing against him through the bedclothes, just as it had on previous nights. Determined to put an end to the matter, she raised herself up in bed and was taken aback to behold a tall, dark figure standing in the middle of the room. To her astonishment, the figure began moving towards her. When the creature made contact with her legs, Mrs. Dodd let out a piercing scream, causing the sinister apparition to drop onto all fours and swiftly scuttle out of the bedroom. The commotion reached the ears of the Robson family next door, who investigated the source. To their surprise, they discovered the Dodd front door wide open. Ellen Dodd became the first person to describe a terrifying entity, part animal and part human, in connection with the Hexham Heads. She claimed it resembled a man-like creature with a sheep-like face. Deeply shaken by her experience, the Hexham Town Council agreed to relocate Ellen and her family to another property. The Robsons continued to reside on Reed Avenue, where peculiar events unfolded during the presence of the enigmatic stone heads. Although they never reported sighting the wolf-like creature, the family attested to the persistence of strange phenomena. One such occurrence was the emergence of a mysterious glowing light in the garden, precisely where the heads had been unearthed. Furthermore, during the Christmas season, an unusual flower sprouted from the same spot. Eventually, the heads were handed over to Newcastle Museum, and their absence seemingly brought tranquility to the household. Since then, no further accounts of uncanny happenings related to the property have surfaced. However, the tale of the Hexham Heads does not conclude there. In fact, the supernatural mystery surrounding these peculiar objects was about to deepen. At Newcastle Museum, the staff proved unable to shed any light on the head's origins. Dr. David Smith swiftly arranged for Dr. Anne Ross, a prominent Celtic scholar at Southampton University, to examine the heads. They were dispatched to Southampton, where Professor Frank Hodson, the esteemed Professor of Geology and Dean of the Faculty of Science, photographed them. In her capacity as an archaeologist, Dr. Ross received the heads in November 1971 and concluded that they were manifestations of Celtic head worship dating back to approximately the 2nd century AD. Despite the rational academic environment of Southampton, located 300 miles away from Reed Avenue and devoid of the bizarre experiences witnessed by the Robsons and their neighbours, the distance and change of ownership had no apparent effect on the paranormal forces connected to these eerie artefacts. Consequently, many published accounts of strange occurrences linked to the Hexham Heads revolve around the experiences of Anne Ross and her family. In 1978, a remarkable encounter unfolded between supernatural investigator Peter Underwood and Dr. Ross within the confines of her Southampton home. This intriguing episode found its way into Underwood's autobiography titled No Common Task and published in 1983. The enigmatic Dr. Ross disclosed an intriguing tale revolving around her possession of the stone heads, which sparked an inexplicable aversion within her. Curiously, despite their similarity to other Celtic heads she had examined throughout her career, the ones found at Reed Avenue provoked an intense sense of unease. Due to her professional commitments at the university, Dr. Ross had decided to bring the heads home for further study at her leisure. However, little did she know that their presence would initiate a sequence of uncanny events. In the early hours of the morning, a state of panic enveloped Dr. Ross as she abruptly awoke to a chilling atmosphere that permeated her bedroom. This frigid sensation stood in stark contrast to the normal warmth of her home. As her eyes scanned the room, they widened in horror, mirroring the experience of Ellen Dodd. Mere feet away, an imposing figure loomed before her, shrouded in darkness, a towering, stooping form that defied easy classification. This apparition, estimated to be 6 feet tall, possessed an eerie amalgamation of human and animal characteristics. The upper portion of the creature bore a striking resemblance to a wolf, while its lower limbs retained the proportions of a human being. Every inch of its body, wrapped in an almost black covering of hair or fur, exuded an aura of otherworldliness. With an unhurried gait, the figure traversed the room, momentarily solidifying against the whiteness of the door. At that very moment, an irresistible force gripped Dr. Ross, compelling her to trail in the creature's wake. Emerging from her bed, she swiftly made her way to the landing, where the soft glow of the upper hallway light offered solace to her young son. As she reached the landing, a horrifying apparition loomed halfway down the staircase, illuminated by the artificial brilliance. She watched, frozen, as the figure effortlessly leapt over the banister, landing on the hallway floor with a resounding thud. It then scurried out of sight towards the rear of the house. Anne Ross, driven by a mix of curiosity and concern, descended to the bottom of the stairs. But as she reached the final step, the uncanny compulsion that had urged her forward dissipated, replaced by an overwhelming fear. Her husband, a commercial artist, had been awakened by her movements and thoroughly searched the house, but found no trace of anything unusual. There was no sign of an intruding creature or any evidence to suggest that an animal had gained entry into their home. At that moment, the academic failed to connect her unnerving encounter with the presence of the stone heads from Hexham. However, this would soon change. 4 days later, both Anne Ross and her husband spent the day in London and returned to Southampton around 6 o'clock in the evening. While their responsible 15-year-old daughter was home, entrusted with caring for her younger brother, they had a pre-arranged signal to indicate when she should answer the door. On this particular occasion, though, their daughter greeted them with a visible sense of shock. Shortly after returning from school, she had encountered a strikingly similar creature to the one her mother had seen only days earlier. Perched on the stairs, halfway up, was a solid black semi-human figure. Without hesitation, it leapt over the railing, moving swiftly on all fours like a beast, disappearing into the area at the back of the house, which served as Dr. Ross and her family's music room. The daughter could not help but notice the creature's wolf-like characteristics, describing it as resembling a werewolf more than anything else. Strangely, a peculiar fascination overcame her, temporarily shielding her from fear, and instead igniting her curiosity about the creature's whereabouts. Venturing into the music room, she discovered that the enigmatic figure had completely vanished. Left alone, she anxiously awaited her parents' return, her anxiety mounting with each passing moment. When it comes to the Hexham Heads, a fascinating tale has emerged over the years, filled with mythology and mystery. However, verifying the truth behind these stories has proven to be an arduous task, if not impossible. One person captivated by this enigma was Peter Underwood, a seasoned researcher. He was intrigued by the first-hand accounts he gathered from Dr. Anne Ross and her husband, which shed light on the events that unfolded during their ownership of the stone heads. During the time the Heads resided with the Ross family, their home became a hub for peculiar and otherworldly occurrences. Various incidents of a paranormal nature took place, possibly linked to the mysterious stones. All members of the Ross family experienced the presence of a man-beast creature. This apparition was initially witnessed by both Dr. Ross and her daughter, with the other children later claiming to have seen it as well. In addition, there were unsettling crashes and unexplained noises echoing throughout their Southampton house. Doors would inexplicably open and slam shut, adding to the eerie atmosphere. In 1973, Dr. Ross shared her experiences with the Hexham Heads in an article for the book Folklore, Myths and Legends of Britain, published by Reader's Digest. 3 years later, in February 1976, She was among the individuals interviewed about the case for an episode of the BBC's popular magazine programme Nationwide. However, by this time, the Heads themselves had mysteriously vanished, adding another layer of intrigue to this perplexing tale. Experiences occurring in the presence of various individuals who claim to have possessed the stone heads at different times have raised intriguing questions. Just like the eerie happenings and inexplicable phenomena linked to the haunted mummy case at the British Museum, similar uncanny occurrences and peculiar accidents are said to accompany the transfer and temporary ownership of the stone heads from Reed Avenue. According to accounts, the heads were allegedly buried and subsequently unearthed at least once, with peculiar events unfolding during their recovery and possession. However, specific details such as locations, dates and identities of those involved remain elusive. For instance, there is mention of an unnamed scientist who supposedly assumed responsibility for the heads for a period, and supposedly encountered a series of accidents while they were in his car, leading to him feeling uneasy about keeping them. One individual who knowingly possessed the Hexham Heads for a time, fully aware of their sinister reputation, was Dr. G.V. Robbins, an inorganic chemist affiliated with the Institute of Archaeology. Dr. Robbins also authored the book Circles of Silence in 1985 and served as a physical consultant for the Dragon Project during the 1970s. The Dragon Project encompassed a comprehensive study of Earth energies and related phenomena associated with standing stones and ancient sites across Britain. Employing a combination of scientific and psychic methods, the project aimed to shed light on these intriguing subjects. In his book, The Secret Language of Stone, published in 1988, Dr. Robbins proposed the stone tape theory, which suggested that minerals such as quartz, a prominent component of the Hexham Heads, have the ability to store information in their crystalline structure as electrical energy. He theorized that this phenomenon created a dynamic energy network responsible for the auditory and visual manifestations often associated with haunted locations and other places of interest. Through his collaboration with Anne Ross, with whom he later co-wrote a book on the Lindau Man bog body, Dr. Robbins developed an interest in the stone heads of Reed Avenue. For a period of time, he kept these artifacts under observation in his own home. Although the werewolf-like creature witnessed by the Ross family did not make an appearance, Dr. Robbins sensed a suffocating and breathless atmosphere closely linked to the witch-like girl head. On the day he collected the heads to take them home, his car experienced a sudden electrical failure, despite the absence of any prior issues until that specific moment. Despite extensive research, the enigmatic Hexham Heads still pose two unanswered questions to this day: their precise age and current whereabouts. Dr. Anne Ross proposed an age of approximately 1,800 years for the stones. However, this dating came under scrutiny in late 1972, just a year after the eerie influence of these peculiar heads began to permeate the Hexham house. Enter Desmond Craigie, a lorry driver hailing from Northumberland, who had resided in No. 3 Reed Avenue long before the Robson family. Craigie made a stunning claim. He himself had crafted the heads a mere 16 years prior, contradicting Dr. Ross's earlier estimation. According to Craigie, in 1956, while employed at a local factory, he fashioned the stones out of a reconstituted stone as simple toys for his daughter Nancy. Initially there were 3 heads, but one met an unfortunate fate, breaking and being discarded. The remaining 2 eventually found themselves lost in the garden, only to be unearthed years later by Colin and Leslie Robson. Despite Craigie's assertion, no conclusive date was ever established by those who had access to the heads over time. Moreover, the fact that they have not been seen for many years adds to the perplexing puzzle surrounding their fate. The prevailing belief suggests that the heads were ultimately buried in a clandestine location to prevent further supernatural occurrences. an unsatisfactory resolution to an extraordinary haunting that continues to captivate the paranormal community 5 decades after their initial discovery. With lingering questions about their age and an uncertain destiny, the Hexham Heads persist as an enduring enigma, shrouded in fascination and intrigue. What lies behind the unsettling phenomenon known as the Hexham Heads? The events that unfolded on Reed Avenue in 1971, objects moving on their own, eerie sounds, and apparitions of ghostly figures, resemble many documented cases of poltergeist activity. However, what makes the Hexham incident particularly intriguing is its deviation from the typical person-focused hauntings observed in poltergeist cases. Unlike the well-known Enfield poltergeist case that revolved around an adolescent child, the peculiar occurrences in Hexham seem to be closely linked to the lifeless stone heads themselves, despite the presence of children in the house. In 1971, the quiet neighbourhood of Reed Avenue was thrust into a realm of the supernatural. The air crackled with unexplained energy as objects danced through the air, propelled by unseen forces. Mysterious noises echoed through the halls, sending chills down the spines of those brave enough to bear witness. But the most chilling aspect of all was the sight of phantom figures that materialised before startled eyes, leaving even the most sceptical among them questioning the nature of reality. A captivating prelude to the case emerges from the annals of a local newspaper, chronicling an intriguing incident known as the Beast of Allendale. Set in the same vicinity, nearly 70 years prior, the tale weaves a mesmerising narrative. It was December of 1904 when reports of a large, ominous wolf with a dark coat began to circulate, coinciding with a series of brutal attacks on farmers' livestock near the idyllic village of Allendale, situated 7 miles southwest of Hexham. The aftermath of the onslaught revealed a gruesome scene. Partially devoured and mutilated sheep carcasses were discovered, bearing witness to the wolf's insatiable appetite. Other unfortunate animals displayed clear signs of distress, with worrying bites peppering their legs. One particular encounter left a lasting impression. A group of women and children unexpectedly stumbled upon the creature, only to send it fleeing with their piercing screams. The Hexham Courant, in various editions, documented the valiant efforts of a multitude of local residents. At one point, a formidable hunting party, armed to the teeth and numbering over 100 strong, banded together to pursue and capture the elusive predator. Their endeavours, however, ultimately proved fruitless. Although a deceased wolf of significant size was discovered on a railway line 30 miles away in Cumwinton, it seemed that the notorious Hexham wolf had eluded capture entirely. The series of attacks abruptly ceased in the early weeks of 1905, leaving the community to ponder the enigma that had befallen them. Perhaps it comes as no surprise that this peculiar but inherently natural occurrence would become entwined with the werewolf folklore that would later haunt Hexham. Regardless of its origins, the mystifying chronicle of the Hexham Heads remains a perplexing enigma, holding the promise of a momentous rediscovery of these sinister relics. Such an event has the potential to become a pivotal milestone in 21st century paranormal research, leaving us captivated by the allure of the unknown. And so ends my telling of the tale of the Hexham Heads. I hope you found it entertaining and enjoyable, and if you did, please subscribe, like, and maybe leave a comment down below. It has, as usual, been a pleasure to sit with you, my friend, and I look forward to your company again very soon.